Unless you've been living under a rock, you have probably already heard that buying a house in Canada can be very expensive. The house prices in Vancouver and Toronto get all the attention in the news, but neither of those cities are actually the least affordable place to buy a house in Canada. On this episode of Bald Prairie Real Estate, I want to show you the list of cities I've put together where it's the least affordable place to buy a house in Canada. You're going to spend upwards of 50% of your income to buy a house in one of these cities, and that doesn't include the nearly $250,000 for a down payment that you're going to need. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bald Prairie Real Estate, where I educate you all about Canadian real estate. It wasn't that long ago, I did a video where I looked at the most affordable places to buy a house in Canada. If you want to check out that video, because there's some great places you can buy a house at really affordable prices, I'll put a link up to that in the description, and one of these pop-up cards is gonna pop up right now so you can check that out. On this video, we're looking at the least affordable cities. Now, this isn't a list of the most expensive house prices. That's an easy thing to do, but most expensive does not always mean least affordable. I'll get to that in just one second, what I mean by that. But before we get into looking at the least affordable places in Canada to buy a house, let's start off like we always do with another terrible joke. How do you cut the ocean in half? You use a seesaw. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in a future episode of Bald Prairie Real Estate, put in the comments below for me. And if you love learning about real estate, hit the subscribe button right now if you haven't already. And if this is an awesome video, give me a like. Why wouldn't I just make a video of here's the most expensive places to buy a house in Canada? Well, least affordable and most expensive aren't always the same thing. I want to look in this video and compare monthly income to monthly housing costs. And I'll get into it in 1 second how I calculated that. But I do quickly want to touch on the fact that in my last video talking about the most affordable places to buy a house in Canada, I didn't talk about land transfer taxes in any of those cities. And that was because only one city, Quebec City there, would have had a land transfer tax. All the other cities had no land transfer taxes. On this video, every city has land transfer taxes, either provincial or provincial and municipal land taxes. So that's a big, significant added expense when you're buying a house. It's going to be added on top of that down payment you're going to need, which are already really expensive in these cities. And I find it really interesting that all the cities in Canada that have land transfer taxes, speculation taxes, vacant property taxes have the highest house prices in Canada, while the cities that don't have any of that have some of the lowest house prices in Canada. Now, you won't have to pay land transfer taxes if you're a first-time home buyer in most cases, but it's an interesting thing to know when you're looking at whether these places are affordable or not. What data am I going to use, and why did I decide to use these specific criteria? Let's talk about household income. I'm using CMHC's and Stats Canada's information on household income. I'm using pre-tax income. There's a very specific reason for that. A lot of people in my most affordable cities video said I should have used after-tax income. When you're qualifying for a mortgage, you're qualified on your pre-tax income, not your after-tax income. So that's reason number one I'm using it. Number two different people could have two very different tax bills. My wife is a contract employee. She's gonna have a very different tax bill than myself as a small business owner. And then of course, in different provinces, you have different income tax situations. So that's why we're using pre-tax income. I'm not gonna be talking about utility costs in these calculations because of course, everybody's gonna have different usage patterns, which would change this quite a bit. And it'd be tougher to make this video as simple as I'm trying to make it here. But as well, whether you have electric heat or natural gas, propane heat, for example, what the weather is like, water usage, all that stuff is going to dramatically change. So we're trying to keep this as simple as possible. We're just going to be looking at the mortgage cost plus property taxes compared to household income. What I'm going to be using for our house price is what's called the composite benchmark price. Composite meaning all property types together. So we're going to combine apartments, townhouses, and single family homes into one easy to digest number. The reason I'm using that benchmark price is because I feel it more accurately tracks prices than average or median price, which can be both skewed by high and low sale values. I've done an explainer video on what benchmark price is. I'll put a link to that in the description, and one of those pop-up cards should show up right now for you to check that out. I'm using a 2.25% interest rate at the time of recording. That's a very common 5-year fixed rate. Variables much lower than that right now, but let's stick with a 5-year fixed rate. And I've looked up property taxes for all the different cities for a composite benchmark priced home. For reference, the average household income in Canada is about $100,000, and the composite benchmark price is $730,000 in Canada. Property taxes range quite a bit across the country, from about 0.5%, sometimes even lower, to over 1% of the property's value yearly. So I've tried to kind of split this down the middle, but the benchmark price house plus the property taxes is going to eat up about 43% of the average household income in Canada. Now let's talk about the least affordable, most expensive places to buy a house in Canada. To demonstrate the differences between most expensive and least affordable, let's talk about Oakville, Ontario first. They have one of the highest benchmark prices in Canada, but also one of the highest average household incomes in Canada. That average household income is $190,000, almost double the Canadian average. And their benchmark price is $1.4 million. That means you need $280,000 as a down payment in Oakville. Then of course, you're gonna have land transfer taxes. That's gonna tack on another $25,000. Add in your closing costs. You're easily gonna need over $300,000 just to get started on buying a house in Oakville. Your mortgage payment is gonna be nearly $5,000, while property taxes are gonna be about $830 a month. The average pre-tax household income in Oakville is nearly $16,000 a month. So that $5,700 a month in the combined payment between property taxes and the monthly mortgage payment is only about 36% of their monthly household income. Meaning that even though Oakville has some of the most expensive house prices in Canada, that high average household income means that they're actually a lot more affordable than their house price numbers would suggest that they are. Number 5 on this list is Toronto. Yes, that's right. Toronto, just the city itself, is actually the number 5 least affordable city in Canada. And I just learned this the other day. The GTA is the fastest growing metropolitan area in North America. The average household income in Toronto is about $120,000, and their composite benchmark price is about $1.15 million. That means your minimum down payment is $230,000. Land transfer taxes, there's both municipal and provincial in Toronto, we're gonna add up to about $40,000. Of course, if you're a first-time home buyer, those don't apply, but that's a big amount of money that anybody else is gonna have to spend. Then you throw in your closing costs, you're gonna need about $300,000 in cash just to get started buying a house in Toronto. Your monthly mortgage payment is gonna be about $4,000, and property taxes will be about another $600 a month. Monthly pre-tax income in Toronto works out to just under $10,000 a month, and that combined payment of property taxes and your mortgage is about $4,600 per month, meaning that the composite benchmark price in Toronto, that house is going to eat up 47% of that household's monthly income. Staying in the GTA for number 4 here is Mississauga. Their average household income is about $110,000 a year. The benchmark price is a little bit lower in Mississauga than it is in Toronto. It's $1.05 million. That means that your down payment is gonna be $210,000. They don't have a municipal land transfer tax, so you've got about $17,000 in provincial land transfer taxes. Again, throw in closing costs, you're probably closing in $250,000 just to get started on buying a house in Mississauga. Your monthly mortgage payment is going to work out to just under $3,700 a month, and then you get $700 a month in property taxes. The average household is going to have about $9,200 a month in pre-tax income. That mortgage payment combined with the property taxes is going to work out to about $4,400 a month, meaning that the average or benchmark price house in Mississauga is going to eat up almost 48% of the average household's monthly income. At number 3, we're heading out west to Burnaby. Average household income, little over $100,000, but the composite benchmark price is $1.1 million. So that means your minimum down payment is $220,000. Throw in $18,000 in land transfer taxes. Your closing costs, you're talking $250,000 just getting started buying a house in Burnaby. Monthly mortgage payment is going to be about $3,800 a month. And property taxes in Burnaby and actually the entire Vancouver area are quite a bit lower than the rest of the country. In this case here, about $300 a month. The average monthly income is about $8,500. And then that monthly mortgage payment plus property taxes, about $4,100 a month, meaning it's going to eat up 48.5% of the average household's monthly income. In at number 2 is Vancouver. Yes, Vancouver is not the least affordable city in Canada, according to the metrics that I have used. The average household income in Vancouver is about $117,000, but their benchmark price is $1.3 million. That means the minimum down payment is $260,000 and land transfer taxes are about $24,000 on a house like that. When you break it down by month, $4,500 a month will be your mortgage payment and about $315 a month in property taxes. The average monthly household income in Vancouver works out to $9,700 a month. That combined property taxes and mortgage payment is going to work out to $4,800 a month, meaning that the average household would have to spend 49.5% of their household monthly income to buy a house in Vancouver. Yes, number one on this list, the least affordable place to buy a house in Canada is Kelowna, BC. I got a couple of suspicions as to why. First off, average household income in Kelowna, $97,000. But I'm really curious if this is skewed very heavily by the number of people who retire to Kelowna, thus would have a very low average yearly income, but a lot of capital they can draw from in savings. In Kelowna, they don't use benchmark price, so I've had to use average price here, but it's over $1 million. And the other side of why I think Kelowna is the least affordable city here in Canada is because the number of people that obviously are retiring, they've sold, moved from somewhere else, they've got a lot of capital, but there's a lot of pro athletes and celebrities that also have homes in Kelowna, and that I think is going to drive up that average price that we're seeing here. Minimum down payment, just over $200,000, and then $18,000 in land transfer taxes. Again, throw in those closing costs, you're into it for probably $230,000 just to get started on buying a house in Kelowna. Monthly mortgage payment in Kelowna, it's going to work out to about $3,600 a month. And then you've got about $450 a month in property taxes. So that means the monthly pre-tax income in Kelowna is only about $8,000 a month. That combined mortgage and property tax payment is over $4,000 a month, meaning that the average household would spend over 50% of their monthly income on just property taxes and a mortgage payment to buy a house in Kelowna. I don't think it should come as a shocker to see areas around Vancouver and Toronto come out as the least affordable. Those get all the attention and news for a reason. They're very expensive. I did not expect Kelowna to end up as the least affordable city in Canada. I know how expensive housing is in Kelowna, but I didn't think it was going to end up being number one. If you want to learn more about the Canadian real estate market and what's going on, right here is my most recent Canadian real estate market update covering 11 major cities in Canada and what's going on with house prices, sales, listings, and everything else. And this right here is what the YouTube algorithm says you need to watch next on Bald Prairie Real Estate. As always, thanks very much for watching.